Hi everyone, I'm Tiffany from Gin and Juicing. Welcome back to my channel. About you guys, but I am kind of living for lockdown at the moment. So it may be the case that some YouTubers are more professional than this, but I am sat here. I have done my hair. Believe it or not. This is just kind of the lockdown look that we're going for. I've put some makeup on today as well. And I'm sat here in yoga pants. So all is not what it seems, but I'm very comfortable and that's the main thing. So the reason I'm doing this video today about what makes a good gin and what makes a bad gin is because of one viewer out there, one subscriber. His name is Dwayne, so I just wanted to say hello and thank you to Dwayne for giving me this idea for some content. So Dwayne contacted me and asked if I was still doing gin videos, which, am I still doing gin videos? I guess I am. I've just been super lazy with this channel and not really uploaded anything, so I haven't actually sat here in front of the camera and spoken to you guys for a very long time. So without further ado, let's have a chat about what makes a good gin and what makes a bad gin. Simple enough as it sounds, but the problem is that gin is very subjective. So the things that I like, you might not like, and the things that you like, I might not like. Case in point is Larios Rosé Gin. And I know I keep referring to this all the time and people are like, Tiffany, this is all you ever talk about. Give Larios a break. The gin isn't that bad. Maybe the gin isn't that bad. Loads of people seem to love it. Loads of people buy it. I bought Larios Rosé Gin because of a friend's recommendation. He could not have been more wrong. Like, I just don't know how two people's tastes could be so divergent. So I thought Larios Rosé Gin was absolutely foul. He thinks it's delicious. He's like, oh, it tastes like strawberries. I'm like, no, it doesn't. This gin tastes like strawberries. I can take you through some pretty fundamental things to look for when buying a gin. What makes a good gin? Number one. I'm going to be quite blunt about this. I think if you drink cheaper gins, they're going to taste worse. Cheaper gins tend to use cheaper ingredients. That's why they're cheap, right? So if we're saying that a cheaper gin uses cheaper ingredients and a more expensive gin uses more expensive ingredients, then it makes sense to try and buy a better quality gin because you're going to get better flavors and the ingredients are going to be of better quality, and also you are less likely to get a terrible hangover. So I'm a firm believer in this, that the cheaper the alcohol, the worse the hangover. And I base this on my youthful jaunts at university, whereby we used to buy the cheapest, most disgusting wine possible just in order to get drunk faster because, hey-ho, students, and this was the noughties. But yeah, cheaper wine definitely makes for a worse hangover. Cheaper gin definitely makes for a worse hangover. If you're going to drink, let's put a little bit more behind it, save up for a better bottle and you'll have a much better experience. So that is my number one, what makes a good gin, top tip. Tip number two, what makes a good gin. I guess tip number two is you don't have to go with something crazy to start with. You can just go for a more standard middle shelf type of gin. There's no shame in that. Gordon's, very good gin, easy to drink, one of my absolute favorites. Don't have a bottle at the moment because it's lockdown. Number two would be Bombay Sapphire. Bombay Sapphire is probably my favorite daily gin. It's absolutely delicious. It's got some lovely botanicals. It's not complicated. It's easy to drink. Price point is very moderate. If you can find Bombay Sapphire, give it a go. If you can find Gordon's gin, give it a go. Another good one is Tanqueray. So you're going to start to pay a little bit more for Tanqueray. But you know, we're talking good middle shelf gins here. Start small, start easy. You don't have to do anything too wild. Top tip number three for what makes a good gin, it needs to have a good ginny taste. And this is obviously really basic and people are going to be watching this video and be like, this girl is an absolute cretin. So the method in my madness is that sometimes they put so many other botanicals and flavors and stuff into gin that it doesn't actually taste like gin anymore. So I think a good gin still has to taste like gin. So case in point. Donk. I don't like this gin. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't like it. It's Warner Edwards. They're a great gin producer here in the UK. They produce some absolutely gorgeous flavoured gins, particularly rhubarb, which is quite a difficult flavour to capture. This is a honeybee gin, so it's infused with honey, not bees. That's important. and it's made in partnership with the Royal Botanical Society to encourage people to plant wildflowers because bees are important, guys. And without bees, we wouldn't have gin. Think about that. But I just didn't like it. I love honey, I love gin. I hated this gin. It just doesn't make any sense. So that would be my third tip. So don't be afraid to experiment, but also, Now let's get on to what makes a bad gin. Now this is slightly more controversial because, like I said, gin and gin taste is all subjective. So what I like and what you like, they might not be the same things, but I'll try and explain. What makes a bad gin is too high of an alcohol content, so it tastes like paint stripper. I know that we all think that, we should have the strongest possible. Sometimes it's just too strong, and if you can taste the alcohol too much, it becomes extremely unpleasant. So that would be my number one, is that it's too alcoholic. What makes a bad gin number two is when they use synthetic flavouring. I've gone on about this before. I've made another video about it. It's down in the description box somewhere. It's called Synthetic Gins, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, or something like that. And when you buy at a cheaper price point, you will tend to have more synthetic flavours. And so, case in point, Larios, let's not talk about that again, is that you will get better botanicals if you pay a bit more money. Gins that actually taste like the thing that they're describing. So this is pink grapefruit and pomelo, and it actually tastes like pink grapefruit and pomelo. And you can see on the back here that they actually crush pink grapefruit peels to make this. So it's quite labour intensive. It would certainly be very expensive to make. Look for things that aren't synthetic. Look for gins that have natural flavours where possible, because you're going to have a better experience. What makes a bad gin? This is a really subjective point, but when I find gins to be bad is when they're just a bit confused about their own identity. I love gin, I love honey, but it just didn't work. And I think it's because it was a bit confused about its identity. It was like, is it ginny enough? Is it honey enough? Is it kind of a bit too sweet? Is it a bit cloying? Does it taste a bit like cough syrup? It was all just a bit too weird for me. So what to look for in a good gin? Basically, you're looking for natural ingredients, natural flavourings, a fairly decent price point. You can be, there's no shame in the game if you're just buying some mid-tier gins like Bombay Sapphire or Gordon's to start with and leaving the wild experimentation till later. No shame in that. You don't have to do things that are weird. What makes a bad gin for me? I think, it's not having a ginny flavour, it's having synthetic flavourings, and it's just a bit of identity confusion about what it wants to be. Is it a liqueur? Is it a gin? Is it supposed to be drunk? Is it just a bottle? Those kind of things. Dwayne, you've also asked me an additional question of what is London dry gin? And it's a really good question, and I didn't really know the answer to it, quite frankly. So I had to Google it because I've drunk London dry gin, and I think a lot of people commonly have drunk London dry gin. It's a really common form of gin. Here in the middle, if you can see, this is a London dry gin, and you can see it is 40%. I think possibly that London dry gin has to be produced in London. Well, it doesn't, because this is a gin from the Canberra Gin Distillery. This gin is actually a London dry gin, despite the fact it originated 15,000 kilometres from London, England. I had to do a bit of Googling to find out what makes a London dry gin a London dry gin, and this is what I found out. So, for a gin, now it doesn't have to be from London at all. London dry gin is not from London generally. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. But basically, the base spirit, so the base alcohol, has to be distilled to a completely neutral spirit of 96% alcohol volume, and all of the flavours have to be added through the distillation process. And they have to be natural plant materials, so they can't be synthetic. Like, we've talked a lot about synthetic gins. They need to be natural materials. So if it's got the flavour of juniper, if it's got the flavour of rosemary or apple peels, it has to be made from apple peels. It can't be made from a synthetic alternative. And nothing can be added after distillation aside from water and a tiny bit of sugar. Now, I've also read another really interesting thing about London dry gin and its origins. And basically, you know how gin is called Mother's Ruin? There's this famous painting of everyone just getting absolutely wasted in the streets on gin in London. And that was actually true during the 1700s, was that people were producing really cheap gin and just getting absolutely smashed the whole time, which is wild, and why London is such a great city to live in. But basically London dry gin came about, the distillation of London dry gin came about so that people could enjoy gin in a nicer way and not just this thing that was just pure alcohol that everyone was getting smashed on. But there you go. So that is That is why London Dry Gin is called London Dry Gin. It's everything to do with how it's made, and it's nothing to do with where it's made. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and do consider subscribing so that I can see you again. If you have any comments or suggestions or any questions, then please do leave them down below in the comment box and I will get to them. And I'm very happy to produce the kind of content that you want to see. So if you've got any questions and you would like me to produce a video like this for you, like I did for Dwayne, then please do just let me know, because I found it really fun and really interesting, and I learned things too. And I will see you all on the next one. Bye!